I don't know about you, but I love a good Russian novel. Something about the long, unpronounceable names and the dark, corrupt society they portray really enthralls me. My favorite one, cheerfully entitled The Death of Ivan Ilyich, describes an upper-class man living in all the niceties of the bourgeois lifestyle, who suddenly falls gravely ill. All the most celebrated doctors in Russia cannot diagnose him, let alone cure him. And so he must confront his own mortality for the first time in his life. He becomes terrified of death, and in his last 3 days of life, he screams and he screams without stop. However, in his last moments, something rather unexpected happens. A force strikes him in the chest, and he is drawn into the presence of a blinding white light. All terror and anguish leave him, and he experiences a moment of ecstasy before he breathes his last and dies. For Ivan Ilyich, vision was the key that enabled his personal transformation. And similarly, in our Parshat Bishalach, vision enables Israel to experience God's redemption. When the Israelites are cornered at the Sea of Reeds by Pharaoh's army, they cry out to Moses, asking him why they would take him out of Egypt simply to die at the sea. Moses responds, Atem tacharushim, hold your peace. Uru'u et yeshuat asher ya'aseh Adonai, for you shall witness the deliverance which the Lord will work for you this day. It must have taken a lot of courage for Israel to listen to these words and stand still. And their rebelliousness conveys to us that they did not believe in God's deliverance because they could only see certain death approaching. But God does redeem them, as God divides the sea, allowing the Israelites to pass through while the Egyptians drown. The final verse before Shirat Hayam shows us the precise moment of transformation in Israel, from doubt to faith. Vayar Yisrael et hayad hagedola asher asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim. Israel saw the mighty hand that God wielded against Egypt. Vayiru ha'am et Adonai, and the people feared God. Vaya'aminu b'Adonai, and they believed in God. Vayar, vayiru, vaya'aminu. They saw, they feared, and they believed. This sentence links the acts of vision with belief in God, and the repetition of the letters Yud, Resh, and Aleph in Vayar and Vayiru further underscores the connection between sight and belief. It is no wonder that the Israelites burst into joyous song in the very next verse, because at this moment, seeing is believing. What was it that Israel saw that day? The Mechilta Midrashic commentary tells us that every Israelite, down to the lowliest servant, saw more than any of the prophets ever did. This Midrash teaches us that on that day, God revealed as much of God's self as God ever would. And for the Israelites at the sea, no doubt could possibly exist in their minds. But the miracle passed, and the trials of the Midbar, the wilderness, began to affect the people, and doubt reemerged. On 3 separate occasions in this parashah, the Israelites complained and grumbled towards Moses. First, the water was too bitter, then they needed food, and then finally they ran out of water. Fittingly, the place that the Israelites received water from the rock that Moses hit is called Masa Umeribah, for the Israelites tried the Lord, questioning whether God was truly in their midst. Apparently, the vision of God fighting for them at the sea had evaporated, and without seeing the proof of a miracle in front of them, they lacked the vision to know that God was still with them. Rashi unfavorably compares this mentality to that of a child. He explains that this is like when a child rides on his father's shoulders as they stroll down the street. The child, not directly seeing his father, becomes uneasy, and he asks a passerby, Ra'ita et Abba? Have you seen Daddy? This child lacks the imaginative capacity to understand that despite the fact that his father was not in his immediate field of vision, he is still right there beneath him. Nachmanides considers this lack of vision a grave sin, for the children of Israel had already seen the signs and wonders of God, and yet they still doubted in God's omnipotence. For the Ramban, the believing Jew must not waver in belief, even through suffering or catastrophe. Perhaps we cannot fault the Israelites at this stage of the journey too much for their lack of vision. Having just escaped the bondage of Egypt, they still possess a slave mentality, a mindset that is infantilizing. They lived a life of embitterment, and so the faith that they have at this point in the journey is immature. It is immature because it is a faith that is dependent on vision. Seeing has to come before believing. So what is a mature faith? Chapter 40 of Ezekiel shows us another example of how vision and faith can interact. While in the Babylonian exile, the temple destroyed, the people scattered, and Jewish life as they knew it gone, Ezekiel has a vision. An angel of God shows the prophet a picture of the temple rebuilt, and the prophet goes into exquisite detail about the exact contours of the restored house of God. Just like the Israelites at the Reed Sea, the prophet enjoys vision of God. However, this chazon, this vision, does not reflect a present reality. The temple is still destroyed, and the Jewish people remain unredeemed. We can thus see that this vision is nothing more than the deepest yearning within the prophet's soul. It is not vision of the eyes, it is vision of the heart. A vision created by the faith that the world can be different than it is right now. We see this mature faith in our friend Ivan Ilyich as he develops the understanding that pain and suffering are mere distractions from a deeper reality. We see this faith in Viktor Frankl, renowned psychologist and Holocaust survivor, who survived the death camps by imagining himself redeemed and reunited with his wife. And we see this faith in the school principal and the teachers of Sandy Hook Elementary, who sacrificed their lives so that they might protect the future of their students. As part of the future of Reform Judaism, we have to hold on to this mature faith. It is not enough for us to simply treat faith as something passive, something that we can hold on to when we see the wonders of nature, hear beautiful music, or otherwise see proof of godliness in our lives. For our faith to actually sustain us and sustain our community, our faith has to be an act of defiance against the status quo. It must be our hope that despite the fact that people die every day from gun violence, despite the fact that peace in this country seems impossible to reach, despite AIDS, cancer, and other debilitating diseases, and despite the brokenness that we feel inside of ourselves, the world can be, and it must be, better. For we know that seeing is not truly believing, but rather we believe so that we might be able to see.